Mainly, it's just older lady living in it. You know, probably a trailer buried in my own. And what definitely not that. Like what I was saying,
Either that or, oh no.
She will not take her.
Okay.
Apparently it's going around.
I started getting tickled the other night.
I'm sick right now.
I was taking my
Exactly.
cough
It is.
drops.
It is.
Got rid
And
of
the
it.
fact
So.
that as
I haven't
their
taken any medicine because I don't believe in that.
My other friend Alicia woke me up to tell me she was at urgent care. She called me early this morning to tell me she was sick. Went to urgent care. Saw Christine there, so I texted
because you're
Christine
having
and
a
said,
meeting.
"Do you have
So
stroke?"
it's a
Don't
nightmare.
come near me.
And she said, "How did you know I was here?" I'm like, "I know."
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to call to order the special work session for the Sierra Vista City Council of March 27th, 2018. We have one council person out with a strep throat problem, and we'll continue to go. Item number 2 is a presentation by Sun Corridor on the Technical Assistance Program. Tony, would you make the introductions, please?
All right, Mr. Mayor, Council, I do want to do a quick introductions, but really the intent of this is to bring our partner Sun Corridor forward and let them explain to you kind of where we're at with the Technical Assistance Program. So we're joined by Steve Egan, Michael Guyman, and Joe Snell in the rear. And I think, Steve, you're up first.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that. All these buttons, I don't want to press the wrong one at the wrong time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here. As Tony said, we're here to give you an update as to how we're coming on the Sierra Vista Technical Assistance Program. Just by way of a little bit of background, for those of you that do not know or are familiar with Sun Corridor, we are the Southern Arizona Regional Economic Development group that serves from just north of Tucson all the way south into Mexico. So that's kind of what we think about the Sun Corridor. One of the things that's so exciting about having the opportunity to work with Sierra Vista is to work on this technical assistance program and the idea around how do we think about taking companies that are in an environment working in the defense industry, an industry that we know is very cyclical in nature, that when a place like Sierra Vista that has the fort, if the fort sneezes, the community can have pneumonia. There's no question about it. And the idea behind this program is to take companies that are tied to the defense industry and help them have the ways of filling the gaps that they have in their portfolio to grow and expand here in Sierra Vista and in the community. So we're going to talk about that. You've been introduced to Joe Snell and Michael Guyman. Michael's going to come up here in just a moment and take you through a little bit of a milestone plan that shows you the exact progress. But what I'd like to do is to just give you a little bit of a background to show you what is the purpose of the Technical Assistance Program. You can read that yourself. But as I mentioned, the real challenge we have is that cyclical nature of defense. That's the challenge that we deal with, particularly in a community like Sierra Vista that is so dependent on the fort. Now that's positive. When things are going well, the budget is strong, the community gets a huge benefit. When that budget starts to have some challenges with it, the community has some extreme challenges because of that dependency. So we are here to really assist those companies that are tied to defense, assist them in being able to expand and grow here in the Sierra Vista community. And that's fundamentally what we're going to do. It's not something that we've got a secret sauce to do this. It's really some blocking and tackling, going about identifying those companies that are in this community that are looking for that ability to move beyond where they are today and fill the gaps that they have that are preventing them from getting there. So how are we going to do that? Well, what we're doing is we're bringing subject matter experts from Sun Corridor the board of Sun Corridor is made up of CEOs, CFOs, management leadership, senior management leadership across many, many disciplines in their companies. And this gives you an example of the subject matter experts that we're bringing to the table for the companies to take advantage of in being able to help fill the gaps that they have in getting them to that next level. So what we'd like to do now is to take you through and give you a chance to see where we've been when we started this last fall, what we have done since that time, where we are today, and then take you through exactly what it is that we're doing in the future. We'll talk about some of the activities that we've been through to get us to where we are today, give a little bit of flavor around the companies that we're going to be working with, that we have started to work with, and Michael Guyman is going to take you through and give you that introduction.
Thank you very much, Steve. Mayor Mueller, council members, Mr. City Manager. Again, thank you very much for this time to present to you our activities. I'm just really going to focus on this one slide because I think this one slide really tells a lot. Steve gave a little bit of the background, but when we signed the contract last September, that really started us on this 2-year journey. We first kicked off the program at the Good Morning Sierra Vista, and obviously went very well. But what we have been doing really ever since, and even before the kickoff, is doing everything that we can to mine the companies that are here, that live in that defense space, as Steve talked about, to get them to apply for and be a part of this technical assistance program. But in addition to that, it was more than just mining companies. We do serve, we historically have served economic development for the Tucson, the sort of Tucson metropolitan area. About 2.5 years ago, as Steve alluded to, we expanded that territory to include all the way up to Casa Grande, down to and a little bit past the Mexican border. So we know the communities that exist in that space, but we don't really know the communities. And so as a part of the effort to really get to know Sierra Vista, Steve and I spent a lot of time meeting with individuals who we really consider true partners in this. We got to know the chambers very well. So we obviously presented at the Sierra Vista Area Chamber, but we also presented at the Hispanic Chamber. We sat down with the folks from SBDC, Mark Schmidt and his team. We met with J.D. Rottweiler from Cochise College. We met with Mignon at RDEF. And we even visited with Congresswoman McSally's office because we really wanted, again, to get to know this community well, because we can't do our jobs unless we really sit down, not only understand the community, but really talk to the people who have been here for a number of years and have been working with many of these companies. And so that ultimately culminated in a meeting that we had that Mark Schmidt was very assistive with, where we sat down with 7 or 8 companies that he helped us find. And it was really getting us not only to introduce ourselves to them, but also understand, again, a little bit more of the business sort of mindset within the community and some of the companies that exist here. We had that meeting on January 25th. But then after that, we wanted to, again, really make sure that we were tapping into sorry, the program is called the Technical Assistance Program, TAP, so you may hear TAP a lot. But we really wanted to tap into the businesses that are here, and so with the help of the city, we also found 95 other companies that had, in the past, maybe over the past 3 to 4 years, some sort of connection with the defense industry. And so we reached out to those companies as well. With all of that said, we have narrowed it down now to 3, and we're very close to a 4th company that are sort of going to be that first group as a part of this technical assistance program. We have met with 2 of those companies. We're in discussions with a third, and like I said, we're almost there with that 4th company. But I just also want to let you know that we do have 3, potentially 4 now. That is part of the first group. We have 2 years to do this, and we are going to continue to conduct this outreach to make sure that we are really tapping into a lot of the businesses that are here in Sierra Vista. So that's the outreach side. But we have other things that we have to do as a part of this grant that are in the scope of work that we signed with the community. There are a number of deliverables. I included 3 on this chart. The first was really to conduct that regional inventory. This was really to find out what business organizations exist out there, do a little bit of a gap analysis, and then make some recommendations as to how we as an organization could fill some of those gaps. That was delivered to the city back in December. And this is what we do. We do this very well. We have done this for the last 12 and a half years in the Tucson metropolitan area, and we do a lot of these types of services for the communities that exist there. And we're, as Steve said, very pleased to do that type of work here as well. So that was the first. The second deliverable was to identify a space. Again, with the help of the city staff, we have identified and landed at some space at Cochise College. I'm in that office at least twice a month. And part of initially being in that office was part of that outreach. Now it's going to sort of transform into doing this analysis of these companies and figure out where we can really help. And then the third area, the third deliverable is something that we're currently working on, and that is the market assessment. So again, this is something that we have done a lot of in many communities, and that's really trying to figure out what really makes up the market here in Sierra Vista, and we can use that data not only to help with further strategies, but also really to identify, as we use this program, how we can utilize the experts that we're bringing in to fill some of the need here in Sierra Vista. Lastly, I would mention the third component in all of this is that was then. We are now sitting here with 3, potentially 4 companies that we're working with. We have, as a part of those interviews, really tried to dig down into what the needs of those companies are. And Steve talked about the subject matter experts that we have already reached out to and identified. We are going to make sure, as we do the analysis post-interview of these companies, to make sure that we match the skill set of those subject matter experts with the needs of these companies. And we think, at least after these first initial interviews, that we have the right kind of experts that we think that are going to do really good work and really help these companies take the next step. So we will be doing that over the summer. We'll probably bring those subject matter experts down starting next month. So you will see them here in the community, and probably, like I said, throughout the summer as we continue to work with these companies. And as I alluded to before, as other companies are identified, we will obviously determine the types of needs that they have and work with these subject matter experts to make sure that they are fulfilling their needs as well. So with that, I believe that is it. And Steve and I and Joe, if need be, are here to answer any questions that you have. But again, I really thank you very much for your time, and I just want to reemphasize that we are very happy about this. We're very happy we're in this program, and we're happy about where this program, I think, will lead for Sierra Vista.
Comments or questions from the council? Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious that out of the 95 companies that you identified as having some involvement with the defense industry, that only 3 and perhaps 4 really showed an interest in what you're offering, which seems to be quite a bit.
Mayor Miller, Councilmember Calhoun, that was done rather recently, as recent as about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So there's a big possibility that we will continue to receive those applications back from those companies. I think right now, you know, they received them and they're probably mulling them over. Some of them, you know, again, this was kind of produced from a list where those companies may have had a contract maybe as long as 4 years ago. That may not be the case anymore. What I would say is that a lot of those companies, I think, are really looking into the information, trying to figure out and assess how this this program could really benefit them. So I think that we will get some additional applications as the weeks go on.
Okay, may I follow up with one more? Also, do you offer those companies any assistance in helping them to see how they could expand, and do you do any additional outreach that way, how they could expand into the civilian population or increase their involvement with the military?
Mayor Miller, Councilmember Calhoun, I think that's a great question, and the short answer to that question is absolutely. I think that's, and Steve, if you want me to assist me with this, because Steve is one of our subject matter experts, and I think what we really want to do with this is not only identify after we've had these initial interviews as to what they need right now, but what the potential is for the future. I mean, we're getting into things like manufacturing and operations and supply chains. I mean, this could open up a number of doors for them.
Yeah, I think some of those things that they just, one of the issues I think you have when you have companies that have been used to doing things in the defense environment, they don't know. Mm-hmm. They don't know. And one of the things we're trying to bring to them is to expand their knowledge base around what opportunities they have either in the commercial sector or in other areas outside the DoD, maybe it's border protection, to get them to understand what those possibilities are and to think about ways of approaching that from possibly some funding standpoint, what resources are available to them. It really becomes a knowledge growing experience for them to use the expertise of folks that have kind of been there to use that mature knowledge to help them be successful. At the end of the day, what we want to do is we want to expand jobs here in Sierra Vista community. We want to grow the community. And the way we do that, hopefully, is obviously through getting good economic development activities to happen. Because I think with economic success, you have a lot of community success. And you have a lot of enablers that come about as a result.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Gentlemen, thank you. Appreciate the update. We appreciate you coming down here and rolling up your sleeves and getting to work.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. We'll next move on to the first commission to do the annual report. I have West End Commission on deck. So if you would do the introductions, please.
Sure. Yes, I'd be happy to. Doing the presentation for the commission is Rosie Mackey. Rosie has been involved with the commission for many years, and before 7, and before the commission, Rosie was what's a primary in developing the Sierra Vista Residents Association. She recognized at that time with the Residents Association a need for the community to be active and involved in that neighborhood, and she did what needed to be done to make that happen and made quite a bit of difference in the neighborhood. She continues to be observant of the area in which she lives, which is the west end of Sierra Vista, and looks at what needs that area may have, or what the community can do to improve the area, whether it's a need, a concern, or a problem. So Rosie's ideal for being chair of the West End Commission and also to be the speaker for the commission today. So thanks, Rosie. It's all yours.
Ms. Mackey, before you get started, there's one thing I forgot to mention. This is the first year that we've really had a somewhat standardized set of slides for everybody, thanks to the Parks and Rec Commission doing such a great job last year. And we're still working on perfecting that. So if there are things that we like, that we don't like, whether it's the council members or the commissioners, about the presentation, please share that with us so we can make the presentations better next year. Thank you. Ms.
Probably
Nagy.
need somebody to push these buttons. As Councilmember Calhoun said, I am the chair of the West End Commission, but I'm not in this alone. We've got 7 members. Mr. Mayor, council members. Which one? This one here, right? The purpose of the West End Commission was originally established in 1996 as the Downtown Neighborhood Commission. It was came from the community, it came from the city, and the commission is to assist and advise the city council in the establishment of plans, policies, strategies relating to the revitalization and enhancement of properties on the west side of Sierra Vista. We renamed the commission as the West End Commission in 2008. These are the boundaries of the West End Commission. They are at the east 7th Street, and to the west BST or North Garden Avenue. To the north we have the 90 bypass, and to the south is Golf Links Road. That's quite an area. I didn't realize how big it was until really sat down and started counting properties. We meet every second Monday of each month at 4:30 at the Landmark Cafe. Pam Anderson has been very gracious in allowing us to be there and to have our meetings there. She's been a participant at the West End since day one. We've got a pretty good record. I think most of our commissions have always had a good record of having attendance by our commissioners, but we kind of went through a kind of a lull in the last couple of years where we had vacancies. And some commissions, including ours, we didn't have a quorum at a couple of times. But it looks like it's back on track where we've got some interest from different areas. And in our commission, it's not just West Enders that are looking at us now. It's people from outside that area. And that's good because then it gives us a different perspective. These are the commissioners that are in place right now. And there's 6 of my favorite people. We still have a vacancy. Each one of them is a West Ender. Myself, then Father Greg is the vice chair, Pam Anderson, Michelle Cotton, Joe Ford, and Danielle Shepard. And most of those folks are business owners. We have associate members, and we're getting more and more interest every day. But our David Miller, who was a paralegal out at JAG, and then Susan Taney is with Pioneer Title. Karen Ginsberg was the fireball that started up the Frytown and the Carmichael Neighborhood Association. She put the fire under everybody to get things happening over there several years ago. Julia McCall has been a member since day one too, also, and she's just termed out and now came in as a associate. Our staff liaison is Tina Moore, and she's in the learning curve, and I'm not sure I'm the one to teach her. But also our council member Calhoun is our council liaison. We've accomplished a lot, and just about everything on this list that I have here, it all depends on each other, each one of these ideas. One of the things that we've done in the past is support the Arts and Humanity Commission's efforts, and also the artist Joanne Berry on the installation of the mural on the wall of the CenturyLink building. That was a lot of fun. support the Carmichael Neighborhood Response Team in neighborhood clean. Gentleman that's on that response team, he belongs to the Columbian Association. He lives in Huachuca City, and he organizes these monthly and quarterly neighborhood cleanups. He also contacted the captain's course out on post, and it gets anywhere from 30 to 50 young captains between 6 and 7 o'clock in the morning every week to come out and clean up a part of our city, and not just on the West End, but throughout the city. And it's been a lot of fun this last year meeting these young people. We put some street lights in the Frytown and Soger subdivision this last year. Trash cans were put in on North Avenue to discourage littering. And one of the things that we asked when we put in the lights is that when we put our trash cans in, we put them under the lights. That way people know where to throw their trash. And you have to be very specific with some folks. We worked with the Parks and Rec in the reevaluation of Timothy Lane Park. And I had a lot of fun with this because Timothy Lane Park has been sitting down at the end of South Carmichael for a long time, and that wasn't a priority. I mean, we didn't need to do anything at that particular time. But we drew attention to Timothy Lane Park, and Parks got on top of it, and also the community development got on top of it, and they're looking at putting the retention or detention, I'm not sure what to call that, the detention ponds to divert water and to keep water from flooding the areas. We collaborated on different events throughout the city, mostly on the West End. We do an annual tour of the West End, and that's our time for bragging rights. That's our time for saying, hey, look what we've done. You can show the community what we've done and that there is progress on the West End. Also, we've been really supporting the Santa on the West End. It's coming into its 6th year, and this focus is on the West End and the children on the West End, working with the Carmichael School. And a lot of the churches have got on board with stockings and ditty bags for the children at that event. And again, we hosted our West End Fair. That's always been a fun event for us. It gleans about anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 people coming through. We thought for a while that we were in competition with the festivals of the Southwest that was in the park, and we found out that we weren't, and that we're working together to make it happening all over the city, not just in one place. We don't have to be exclusive. A lot of things have happened because of us talking to MWR. The initiatives for the future action, as you can see, the Vista 2030 goals and strategies are the motivation for some of the things that we've been doing, or most of the things that we've been doing. And you can see the correlation on the next 2 slides here. And we do understand the current and forecasted budget constraints, and will continue to assist the city. Everybody wants everything right now. And something that the city's taught me is I have to wait. And it's necessary. Sometimes there are things that have to happen first before we can make the next step. The commission continues to support the Frytown annexation efforts, even if it's unsuccessful this year. So if it doesn't happen this year, we're going to do it again. We're going to go after it again because it's absolutely necessary to include and annex these county enclaves to the benefit of all the residents. We want to continue using this CD CDBG funding to assist the additional solar streetlights that we're going to need in the Frytown. But we have to wait until the annexation happens, because where we need these lights is in county, and city can't do anything in the county. And again, there's one of our favorite things: provide some more trash cans under the lights. Maintain the funding and continue efforts to complete the North Garden Avenue Improvement Project. I feel, and I think the commission, all the commissioners feel too, that North Garden Avenue project is essential. It would be the first step to beautifying the West End, to make it inviting to new visitors to our residents. And I think it would encourage the residents when they see something was done. Fund the Fry Boulevard West End corridor concept. We know that that's down the road a piece, but I want you to keep it in your headlights. It's got to continue. There's something. If we start with the North Garden Avenue project, finish that, and then move on step by step to the next project. And one of my favorite, and also Father Greg's favorite, is the grassroots mural projects. Arts and Humanities has their different projects that they're working on with the city. They are they're looking at the water tower on Canyon Drive, and that's going to be a great project. I'm excited about that. But we are also looking at the different ways that private property owners can improve their properties or make their properties a little more attractive by putting murals up too. There's an excited group that's kind of circling right now, pulling information in. How do we get grants? How do we get artists? Who do we want to use as artists? And so that's something that we're really working on, trying to get that accomplished too. A little bit at a time. Every little bit helps. Some of the concerns that we have in the West End Commission is that we'd sure like to get a lot more feedback. We'd like to, if there's something that we can do on the West End as a commission to promote whatever the city is doing. It's like our West Sierra Vista redevelopment plan. I'm excited about that. I like the way it was revamped. I like the way it was put together. It's another start. And give some of these businesses an opportunity to build up their business and make their property a little better. I'm talking with Tina quite a bit because she's our liaison, and so I kind of looking at some of the annexation information in the Frytown and where she's at and what kind of obstacles she has. If we know what's going on, maybe we can help. Because I think it's necessary that as a commission we have to be talking on the same sheet of music. We need to be saying the same things. If I understand what the city wants, then I can explain to the people that ask me. And then there's the perception of crime on the West End. Whole lot of people are still saying, isn't it dangerous over there? I remember it used to be. And I requested the stats for crime on the West End. I talked with Chief Thrasher, and he's going to sit down and explain what these stats mean to me, what they mean to the West End. He told me that there's not any, but we don't have that stranger on stranger aggression on the West End. I'm lost for words right now. Any kind of attacks that are going on is domestic or drug related, and it's generally confined to a building, and it's generally not on the street. I want to know more about that so I can explain to people that, you know, I can walk my dog. I can walk at night on the West End, and I'm not fearful. I'm not saying there isn't any crime. I'm saying there's less than there was, and I feel safe. That's pretty much what I have in regards to our report for this year. Are there any questions of me?
Mrs. Mackey, I'm gonna start out with a couple of things. I want to hit on a couple of things you mentioned. One of the things I struggle with is the CDGB money, and I think I read that it's actually included in the budget that was passed last week, with a slight increase. Although that's probably won't translate to anything for us, I'm sure. My concern is, you know, I like the idea of dressing things up and making them look good by having art on the water tower, etc. But in my mind, when I'm thinking about what's going on the West End, is it more important to have ADA sidewalks and lights on thoroughfares with trash cans or whatever else may be needed? And where do you think the priorities are? Should it be, we'd like to have both, but we can't, obviously don't have enough CDG money to do both.
No,
So,
well, I do think that ADA requirements are essential and should have priority. We like our lights and we like our trash cans and we like the murals. I don't think that the murals that are coming from the grassroots is going to come from anybody's budget but the community, or from grants.
and that's what I think too. Is I think we have enough local folks that would be interested in, you know, if we're talking $5,000 or $10,000, or even a number of people with $1,000 to dress up the neighborhood, that we could probably have a campaign to do something, at least cover part of it.
Yeah.
The other question I have for you is, I really appreciate your position on annexation of the Fry Town site. But again, that's one of those things where when the staff goes out and starts knocking on doors and asking for signatures, it's always good to have a community member along with them, so it's not, hi, we're here from the government, we're here to help you, because a lot of people will shut their door when they hear that. If there's a neighbor there with them, so I'm sure the community development will be asking you to come out and help with that effort too. We still have some time, but I agree with you that eventually, to be able to fix the neighborhood the way people really should be able to live safely, comfortably, we need to annex the county enclaves.
Absolutely. I introduced a couple to Tina Moore at the last meeting, or the 2 meetings ago, of the Carmichael Neighborhood Association. These people are warriors for the annexation. They want the annexation to happen, and they're willing to go out with the community development and help them as much as they can. So,
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to comment that I think what West End Commission does is show how community involvement of the citizens in the community can make a real difference in the way the government approaches what we do. And that it's very, very important to not only hear from members of the commission, but all of their contacts. They're constantly speaking to members in the community to get input on what's important. And with all due respect, Mayor, you know what that always means, but you know, I mean this sincerely. I would like, and I think through the work that the West End Commission does, I think we should be able to say we're from the government and we're here to help. And you know, municipal governments do connect much more with the citizens than any other government. And I would like it, and with the help of the commission members and those folks from the Carmichael Neighborhood Association, I would like to prove that as a municipal government, we can go to the people that live in this community and say, we're here from the city and we're here to help. And that the folks that are working so closely with us will support that we do mean that we're here to help. And I think another thing that you guys do, because you work closely with staff and with us here, that you be a testament to that we do mean to help. And when we're not, you can tell us what we can do that would make this a closer relationship between the citizens and the city government. So I think the one other thing I wanted to comment about too is the tasking ideas that have come up, and that's that the city council may come together as a group and say, this is what we'd really like to ask of you guys to do to help us out as we try to do whatever it is. So that could be almost anything, and as soon as we have an opportunity to discuss it, we'll bring that back to the commission. On the same token, as you may remember from that guideline document we put together, the commission can come together as a group and make a decision about, let's ask the city council about this, and come to us with what you think is really, really important for whatever, well, what the West End Commission might want. So that, to me, is a real partnership between the council having a commission to assist and support us, and also being here to assist and support the citizens. So I think what you put together here, the only thing that wasn't commented on directly, and I don't know if we really need that from the commission, is the cost of, the kinds of things that the commission may be saying. Primarily things like the trash cans. Do we need to?
No, well, actually, that should come up through the projects that are proposed through the CDGB. So the commission obviously thinks it's a good idea to have trash cans near streetlights. Streetlights also cost money. ADA facilities cost money, et cetera. And I want to talk a little bit about tasking, that since you brought it up. In the mission, there are some inherent things in the mission of each in the mission of each commission in their establishing guidelines, and that's why we had that at the beginning, the slide. Let me make sure I get the total. I get the proper title of it.
And I don't have mine in front of me. So I'm with you.
The purpose, or the mission basically establishes that mission, and then, as they say in the next to last slide, where they were looking at what they want to do for the next year, as long as that's within the mission, I don't feel there's a need to do a specific tasking. I think this tasking, if there's something that's a little bit that's related, but a little bit outside of their mission, I think that's the point in time where we as a council need to sit down and say,
can we add that? Or
do we want to add that? Do we want to task them? And the tasking should be a specific goal, a time frame, the money associated with it, all those kind of things before we give it to a commission in general. And that's not just this commission.
Okay.
Craig?
Thank you, Mayor. I know that when the commissions come up, almost every year I've got a question that I pose to every single commission, and I try to stay somewhat consistent. Several years ago I asked how much communication you had with other commissions, and I know that to a T, the commission said that they didn't really talk too much, and I know that's since been rectified, and a lot of the commissions now do collaborate, which is good to see. Last year, I think we talked a little bit more about the empowerment part of it, and that's what kind of got rolled into the plans. I do have some concerns, though, when you talk about the feedback on issues. I agree with you 100% but maybe there's a bit of a paradigm shift that I don't think it falls to you at all, or any of these commissions, but I think it falls more to council and staff. See, I think that we do ourselves a bit of a disservice when we wait to hear feedback from the commissions on something that more than likely, if we're honest, has probably already been decided and worked through a little bit, and we're just kind of coming back. I think that what we probably need to focus on, and I'd be interested in your feedback, is something that's more of like feed-forward control, where well before the issues ever even making it to a council work session, all the commissions, but in this case the issues that pertain to the West End, they're already being circulated through the West End, and that's part of the staff report that comes up to council to say, somebody from staff sat there and we talked to them, and this is what these multiple commissions came back up with as it pertains to these ideas. I know it happens to some small scale, but also just going off of your slide where you said you have feedback issues, that fall within some of the missions, I agree with that. Do you think that the commissions would be, and this will be the question that I'll ask everybody, do you think your commission would be receptive to being brought in much earlier into some of these discussions so that your input's coming up to council well ahead of us, maybe having a formal discussion on it at a work session or certainly prior to a vote? And how would you think that that would look or play out for you? What would work for you?
It's hard to answer that. I think that we don't need to know everything that's going on within the city because you can't take it all in. But if we at least had some lead time as to what the city's looking at, and maybe we can have some discussion within our commission. And I don't know how to explain this. It's if we have heads up, we can work together with the council. We can work together with some of the departments if that's. I'm having a hard time answering that. I know what I mean, but
sure.
Yeah, and that's true.
It can be a rhetorical question, maybe just something to think about as you go back to your.
It's going to have to be.
Yeah.
The comment about the feedback is, I don't want to get in the way as a commissioner of what the city's doing, because I mean you folks are moving forward. But like I said, if we're all reading off the same sheet of music, and I'm getting questions out in the field, I'd like to be able to answer some of those questions. If we know what you need from us, let us know.
Yeah, so I think, Ms. Mackey, maybe that's where the paradigm shift may have to occur, and I agree with you. I think what I try to tell the commissions, and now that I've worked with, I think 6 or 7 of them at this time, is I always thought of them as kind of an offshoot of our advocacy program. You know, they're time since I lived on the West End. It's the truth. It's just been a long time, but I used to live out there. But I still think that, for example, when we were going through the West End Development Plan, or when we were talking about some of the issues that came up with that, had we had a forward echelon, a lead element out there already starting to collect some of that information from those stakeholders, that maybe we could have gotten to common ground or a workable result faster.
Yeah,
and I don't know if we did that very well. So that's why I'm just want us to question the.
I think we learn as we go. Sometimes you can't foresee what you're going to encounter out with the community. You think I run into it too. You think you know what they're thinking, and all of a sudden somebody gave you a different idea. It's,
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Mrs. Mackey. Did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Will next be followed by the Environmental Affairs Commission, and again, Ms. Calhoun is the liaison. So if you would introduce.
Okay. Mr. Hargis will do the presentation for the Economic Development. I'm sorry, Environmental Affairs, Environmental Affairs Commission. This is a commission that I think all of us on the council are familiar with because they do look forward into what they see as upcoming issues for the community and try to prepare information for us that we can use. Well, let me just say thank you all for coming from the West End to participate in this presentation. Thanks, Billy. Where was I? This commission is forward-thinking. They look at issues that either staff has presented as something the city is thinking about or something they see as possibilities for environmental in the environmental area for the city. So Billy will present to you what has happened and what the commission is looking forward to. And thank you, Billy.
Thank you for the introduction. As Councilmember Calhoun said, my name is Billy Hargis. I'm the 2018 chair of the Environmental Affairs Commission. And let's go ahead and get started on our annual report here. First thing I'll cover is our members we have this year. It's myself and Ron Faulkner, our vice chair over here, and Dennis Ehrenberger, our secretary, Gene Fenstermacher, also present here, Tom Kennedy, Norm Patton, and David Alley. Associate members are Amy Carter. Council liaison is obviously Councilmember Calhoun. And staff liaison was Sharon, which was here earlier. She took off. She said she had something to do. So more important than my presentation, of course.
How could that be?
So, okay, so our mission, this is straight off the city's website description of the EAC. The Environmental Affairs Commission was established in 1993 to advise the City Council on environmental issues, programs, and procedures relating to reduction, reuse, recycling, energy conservation, environmental stewardship, waste management, regulatory compliance, water conservation, community education, and environmental demonstration projects, which is a lot of stuff. It can cover pretty much anything, so we gotta kind of keep our scope narrowed as much as possible. There's an error in processing this page. Where'd my presentation go? You have to have it on the desktop, or? Oh, here we go. I sent it in a PowerPoint as well. Do you know if you have that?
You may just have to go off your sheet. What you
That's fine.
We do have copies, so we can look on.
Is that not pulling up?
I'll look on with you.
It jumped to another presentation.
I have dibs on looking on with the mayor.
I'll just listen.
Oh, no, I can look on with Craig. Oh, wait, here it is.
Where were you?
Here it comes.
Right there?
We're going to be on the next page.
Oh, there it
Yeah.
is. Thank you anyway.
I would use that.
Okay. Oh, okay. My bad. I broke it. Okay, so what have we done for you lately? In 2017, we covered a couple items. This isn't everything. I'm just narrowing it down, so I'm not boring everybody in all of our nitpicky stuff. One of the top item there is the Environmental Merit Award, which this is the first year that was given out by the city. And the applicants for this award had submitted their different paperwork to the EAC, and they were scored on a series of categories, including their project's need and innovation, the community engagement and impact, city environmental planning, if the city's environmental planning and goals were integrated into their project, and their project sustainability. We had 3 applicants this year, not a whole bunch, but more than none. So we had Southwest Gas. They applied with their new operations center they built in town, and their application was based on their green building practices they involved in that project. The second applicant was Winter Haven HOA, and they did a submittal for. They had a project in Winter Haven where they changed out 121 street lights, reduced the amount of street lights to 73. Shielded street lights that were dark sky compliant. That was kind of in the same vein as the city's dark sky initiatives. And the third person or group to give it a submittal was WaterWise, which you've been, everybody knows who WaterWise is around here. They've been educating people on water conservation and have had a heavy involvement in water conservation programs since 1994. This year we awarded WaterWise with the Environmental Merit Award due to basically their impact on the community. We felt that between the 3 submittals, the WaterWise's impact over the years is probably incalculable, with how many people and different businesses and practices that they've touched over the years. Another item that we've covered this year was glass recycling. And it's going to be an ongoing item, which includes potential ways to process and use glass within the city and the county, or how to expand the current program. Our current focus is increased on awareness of the drop-off program, and we know that this glass recycling is a bit of a difficulty because it's a third party that does recycling. That's our county program, or our city program, our joint program with the county, because of the weight of glass. So we're just kind of always thinking about maybe different ways that we can better assist that program, or get the word out better to have people use Public Works Center. Every time I've gone by there to drop off some glass, it's pretty full. So obviously there's quite a few people, so it might be doing pretty good. Another item we've covered this year is water management, which is pretty much on there every year with the EAC. It's a continued item that the EAC monitors. We've continued our research on water return to the aquifer, basically looking at the numbers turned in by different organizations, and then continue to monitor water usage in the city, also by just monitoring numbers turned in by different organizations. And reviewing net zero water use. This can be a hot button issue about what that turns into, but we kind of discussed different ways, kicked back and forth between sometimes disagreeing commissioners about what that can mean and how that could be implemented in the city if possible. And we briefed the city council on a sustainable yield plan. That was the briefing was given on February 6th. That was on the work session on that date, with the proposal to pass along to the USPP Upper San Pedro Partnership, which consists of mostly of drainage basin designs outside of the city limits. We understand that's not something that the council can act on within itself, but via the mayor over to that direction. So, the last thing on this slide that we covered this year is we reviewed the potential for adding, in 2017 we reviewed this, the potential for adding dry cell batteries recycling to the city program. We have the county has some battery recycling that goes on already. Numerous businesses also do battery recycling. It's generally rechargeable batteries, though. But upon further review, this is dry cell battery recycling is extremely cost prohibitive in any scale, unless you're really into recycling and don't mind paying quite a bit for it. I mean, they range anywhere from $20 for a little box to recycle batteries to $100 to recycle a bucket. Wow. So that's completely out of the question for doing in scale for the city. So in the future, and our alignment with Vista 2030, I just picked a couple of the elements out of the Vista 2030 plan. The first line there, environmental planning. I said the EAC will assist the city in a wide-ranging goal of environmental stewardship by continuing to get out the word on the Environmental Merit Award. Since the element 6 is kind of a large encompassing item where it covers the air quality, water quality, natural resources, I feel the Environmental Merit Award encouraging businesses and individuals to take the initiative in kind of accomplishing the same task the city is trying to do in the element 6 of their environmental planning. The next piece is water resources, element 8 of the Vista 2030, and conservation, element 9. I think as far as the EAC is concerned, these two things kind of go hand, these two elements of Vista 2030 go hand in hand. We'll continue to advise the council regarding aquifer sustainable to that goal. We'll continue to research the aquifer annual deficit, encourage water conservation, and continue to research net zero water usage, or ways to accomplish that. And I just kind of listed the overall elements because there's numerous goals within those elements that that can be touched on. And the last piece there, the public facilities, services, and public buildings is element 11. Many of those items don't apply to the EAC, but specifically 11-8, the goal to comply with Cochise County's Regional Solid Waste Management Program and recycling. You know, I think that should be an issue that the EAC should really spearhead in the community and getting that on track, and or trying to assist making that a better working program in the city. I know that the city of Sierra Vista is, you know, that we contribute the most amount of recycling to that program for the county, but I understand there's a lot of contamination. We've discussed different ways to solve the contamination problems, which include recycling bin labels, and as I mentioned in the meetings, if need be, I will ride on a recycling truck and do it myself to clean up the contamination problem. I don't mind walking the community and do it either. So another thing we've talked about is increased community engagement on recycling, perhaps via introduction of school curriculum. ReCommunity in Tucson has curriculum for K through 6, and I think, well, K through 5 or K through 6 and 7 through 12 on recycling programs. We maybe thought about modifying that program for the recyclable items in this community, because it is kind of recycling has much more dynamics than most people think. Just throw something in a bin and it goes somewhere. But there's a lot more involved than people understand. And I think it's important that the community understand that, because as we discussed many times in our meetings, many people in the community are not from Sierra Vista per se, especially with a fort and the Border Patrol. So, you know, when I moved back here from California, I mean, everything was recyclable. You could put oil in your recycle bin. You could put your printer in there, all kinds of stuff. And I see driving down the street that, you know, I've seen carpet sticking out of these, you know, these recycling bins. It gets me right here. You know, that's what I see it. So I want to clean that up for the city. But other items we talked about was perhaps participating in neighborhood cleanup programs and in the adoptive programs, all kind of going back to the goal of 11-8 to get the you know, solid waste items going in the right direction, whether the landfill or recyclables or even compost. So, I didn't have a when we meet slide. We meet on the 4th Wednesday at 3:30 over at the Public Works building, and I also didn't have a concern slide. I know that the other one that I looked at from Parks and Leisure, I think it was. I know that, and I've seen it in the past ones where there was a tasking question, but I think as far as tasking, much like Mayor Mueller said, if you combine the mission with the goals in Vista 2030, it kind of is tasking in itself. If you can go through that and find items that seem to, you know, that go together, then that's your task. So, I mean, if there's any other items to be tasked, or, you know, I'm sure the EAC would be more than happy to jump on anything. I think our current group is a number of people with engineering backgrounds who are happy to analyze like all kinds of stuff. But that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hargis. Questions from the council? Comment?
Thank you so much. That was a great presentation. I appreciate how both commissions have tied it in as to the Vista 2030. I do want to comment, though, that I think our EAC Commission, they were looking at recycling way before it became national news that China is no longer going to take our recyclables, and primarily because of the contamination that China was seeing nationally in our recyclables. So I applaud what you're looking at for particularly the recycling area, and I would appreciate and also applaud recommendations that come from the EAC regarding how we can do a better job. I tend to think that this whole issue will get resolved around recycling, who's going to take it, how we're going to move it forward to somebody that, you know, these things are well worth recycling, whatever we're able to recycle, rather than putting it in the landfill. I saw an interesting thing again on Facebook today about Sweden and how they burn their stuff without polluting the air. So I think that's also something that maybe is worth looking at, just to see how they do that. Of course, they have a lot less trash than we do. But that's all I wanted to say. The reducing the contamination, I think, is a major issue for our community, and any ideas you have will be appreciated in that area, provided we can continue to do recycling. And the glass piece is something else. I don't know where we are with that. I remember there was discussion about it at our last work session about glass, and I know you guys have looked at some interesting possibilities with glass. This is one of those areas where feedback from the city back and forth is I think, really important, to know whether you're spinning your wheels or we're spinning ours, and how we can work together on what ideas you guys are coming up with, your commission is coming up with, excuse me for saying you guys, your commission is coming up, and what ideas are coming across to us from various areas. So keep your ears open, and if feedback is an important issue to you, please let us know, and I guess you're going to address that to some degree.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had pretty much the same basic questions that I asked the West End Commission, but I'll kind of scope it in a little bit because I heard your comments already. But just a clear use case. For example, you know, last week at a council work session, council was briefed on the challenges that we're going to have with waste management essentially going forward, and potentially having to increase those fees. There was a nice public notice put out about it as well. So I don't know if but was your commission ever formally briefed up on it? Was your input sought on maybe some alternatives to how that problem could get fixed? And if you want to even go a step further, more specifically, the problems that we will face with recycling coming up, was that something that was brought to you guys?
Yeah, we had a presentation from the city manager, Chuck Tuchek over here, and also Marty Haverty from I'm not sure what his title is.
County Solid Waste Director.
Yeah, he came over and it told us the issues in our last meeting. But this has also been something that as Councilmember Calhoun said, that we've been discussing for quite a while, and our staff liaison has kept us informed of the potential issues on the horizon. And also commissioners, you know, we monitor the news, so we kind of knew that as of January 1st, this was going to back up and be a problem anyways, because it was a global issue that was coming down the pipeline. So we were aware and have been talking about ways to offset, or help the situation.
So I guess to help counsel out, and the reason why I'm going down this line of questioning isn't to sharpshoot any single commission, but you all have reoccurring themes within your mission statement, which is to advise council on policy and process and procedures, and ultimately help guide us so we don't make crazy decisions in a vacuum.
Us?
No, yeah, we've never done it before, right? So I guess the question would be, and this is just an opinion, how would you recommend that we best use you to get that information up to us prior to a vote that does involve recycling or a decision on how waste management or water or et cetera would be used?
Well, it's definitely dependent on the item. I think the most important factor is probably a timeline. If there's going to be some sort of item that's going to be in a work session or discussed by the council that's relevant, or you want us to, kick around beforehand, I would just let us know via our council liaison that it's going to occur. Other than that, I mean, a lot of the stuff that we look at, we talk about all kinds of stuff, and even in this presentation, I've only got, I only had 4 items for the year. We talked about a lot of other items, but we generally flush them out between ourselves and determine whether or not we think it's worth sending up the flagpole, to you guys. So I'm not sure if that answers your question at all, or is even close to it.
It's close.
I have to say that the EAC meetings are very robust, and as Billy said, there's conversation there that, of course, didn't make it into the presentation, but are considerations from the purpose of the commission that you've taken on and you discuss and you work through, and those things that you zero in on is this needs to go forward, it comes forward. And the one thing that I think probably as a liaison I could do better is kind of flesh some of that out here, that these were the points of discussion, but there's no major issue coming to the council at this time, or just leave it until you decide it's time for us to really talk to you guys about this, because we have some decisions and some recommendations here. So I think that's going to work for especially this group, that they'll kind of work through a lot of the environmental areas and then come to us or ask me to come forward with where they are in a discussion.
And I think that one of the things I heard from both Gwen and from Mr. Hargis is the council liaison is key, and I would encourage all council liaisons to talk with not only their commissions but with the staff that's appointed to assist, as well as city management, to see what issues are going and bringing things forward. So I think that would be helpful.
One thing I found that's helpful for me is to say, is this something you want the council to know about at this time? Or is there anything else you want the council to be aware of at this time? So that helps me to focus, which is always helpful, on what out of that whole meeting I need to come forward with. So that might be useful for other council members. I don't know.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions from
I see
Mr.
a couple of
Hargis?
hands. Do others get to speak at a time like
No.
this?
We'll get running short on time. That's why I'm going to limit it. Anything else? Thank you, Mr. Hargis. Great presentation. We appreciate all the work the Environmental Affairs Commission is doing for the city.
Thank you.
Will next be followed by the Parks and Recs Commission, and Mr. Blanchard, would you introduce the
Parks and Rec Commission has done a very good job on identifying what the neighborhoods want in the neighborhood parks, and they're currently working on Timothy Lane Park. Wes?
Jill's going to do. And this is the chair, the new chair.
I am the
right?
new chair.
Ms. Kunkel.
Yes, so my name is Jessica Kunkel, and I will be briefly thorough since we are running out of time. Our commission was originally established in 1971. There's a lot of words there, but I essentially tell people if it doesn't involve work or church, it's probably us. So we always encourage people, come talk to us, ask us. If it's not our lane, we'll at least be able to point you where you can go. We have 7 members, currently 6. We do have a vacancy with staggered 2-year terms. We meet on the second Tuesday of every month at 5:30 at the Oscar Run Community Center. And in the last year, we've met 9 times. We missed 2 due to not having a quorum. This is our current commission breakdown. And I'm incredibly fortunate to work with people because I think right now we have a very good mix of hobbies and interests. We have, I personally play soccer. Scott is really involved members, we have those of us that have kids, we have or commission members that don't have children. So I think we really make a very close representation of the city in order to come together with our ideas and have really well-rounded discussions. Our representatives, Miss Laura is our staff liaison. We have loved working with her, and I think that her goals are very much aligned with what the commission would like to see right now. So that's incredibly exciting. Councilman Blanchard is our council liaison, and then Miss Gloria is always a delight to have around. The issues addressed so far this year, we updated the city, or we recommended updating city codes for wine and spirits, the smoking ordinances, drones, and parking. And just this past weekend, we actually drove around some of the city parks and pointed out where it would make more sense to have no parking signs based on where we see cars parked constantly where they're not supposed to be. And then the Timothy Lane Park, which has been brought up before, right now we have sent our ideas and our recommendations back to the engineers because the water retention is a huge problem in that park. If you even drive down there, you can see where the park is just a middle lane for the water rushing through. So the first thing that needs to happen there is we need to figure out the size and best location for that water retention. And then based on the 3 public meetings we had and calls to the public, we prioritized the wants of the community, and now we're just trying to make sure that we can get as much of those, or as many of those wants as possible based on the current budget. To include figuring out where we're gonna put our donated trees and then moving irrigation to them. The new signage design and format as far as getting all the signs across the parks in Sierra Vista consistent, and also updating them, because if we're gonna update rules on smoking and parking and drinking, it's only appropriate that we update the signage so that people know exactly what the rules and regulations of the said parks are. Let's see. And the small parks master plan and the long range plan, we've been working with Laura on that, and then we elected new officers last month. So this is the Vista 2030. Obviously, we don't talk about these every week. These are just the ongoing conversations that we have with parks. I know you've heard about Tompkins Park as far as it getting brought up to ADA compliance. The park itself, getting into the park is ADA compliant, but the playground equipment isn't. And as far as I know, we have one park in town that has ADA compliant playground equipment. We're talking about trying to figure out ways to get more. At least one more park up to ADA compliance. Let's see. Finishing the multi-use paths around town is a big deal. Figuring out what to do with Kings Court is a conversation that comes up all the time. And then we talk about the Cove as far as the wave replacement, if we're ever gonna do that, if we're not, and either way making sure that we think more long-term, so that any new equipment we are putting in there, we start thinking longer-term replacement and fixing into the budget. And, all right, sorry, I'm trying to rush it because I know we're short on time. So coming with some of the questions I've already heard, our bottom line up front is help us help you. If you guys are having discussions, have questions, absolutely ask Laura, or Bob. They meet with us every month. We usually, if we're not fully sure we want to answer for everybody, we go back and start asking questions. I'll post it on my Facebook page to my friends. Hey, what do you think about this? And I gather all that information, I bring it back and say, hey, this is what I think and this is what I'm hearing. So it's not just me speaking for everybody. Planned and future improvement of our parks. Right now, we all know money's tight. It feels like a bit of a, what came first, the chicken or the egg scenario. We all want the park to look really nice so we can draw in more visitors, but we need the visitors to have the revenue to help make the parks better. So we're just trying to figure out how to work together to get that done. Desires and needs of the community. We're always here to inform you guys on what that is. And then obviously, supporting leisure and library staff who are near and dear to our hearts at all times. Are there any questions?
That was very, very quick, and I appreciate you watching the clock. But we do have a little time.
Okay.
Are you going to start again? Go ahead.
Whoever you point to.
Go ahead.
What is BLUF?
Bottom line up front.
Okay.
Not a bluff.
It's not a bluff. That's really all. I didn't have any other questions. I think, I have a comment. Your plate's really full because of the, all the parks that we have.
There's way
And-
more than even I knew we had.
Yeah, yeah. I was curious about Bella Vista Park, but you don't have to talk about that right now. That one always is tucked away, always surprises me that it's back there, so, thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this may not necessarily be for you directly, but, so I guess we'll have a pattern with the kind of the canned slides. I don't know who came up with those, but the comment, we understand the current and forecasted budget constraints and will continue to assist the city. It almost sounds like a promise. What is that?
Death notice?
I guess, but what is that something, and I know you mentioned it a few times, and I think somebody else did too, where cost constraints and everything else. Do you feel that that's kind of limiting on your ability to imagine? And I'm trying to figure out where that's coming from, that
Imagine
you have
no.
to make that statement.
Imagine no. I think it just comes from an idea of, for the sports facilities, a lot of them were getting really torn up. And this was before I joined the commission, so I don't know. What I was hearing just from the player perspective was, we've complained to the city that X field needed maintenance or this needed to be done, and the response was, we don't have the money right now. So I think that maybe it's a myth at this point that's just continued.
Well, maybe this goes back to the paradigm thing that I was kind of hitting on, and to see it come, I imagine again we'll see it. But, I don't think that we as council currently understand the current and forecasted budget, since we haven't really started to weigh into that. And I guess I'm just trying to, I appreciate, maybe putting a little bit of bounded rationality on to what that's going to look like. But again, it comes back down to the commissions, and maybe this is where my opinion's just different. You're advocates for the parks, and I don't understand why anybody would put any bounded rationality on you coming back to us to say,
Okay.
here's our wish list of things that we want to get done, or you guys or anybody else. And then it's up to council to figure out how we're going to understand the current and forecasted budget and work within those constraints. And if you don't like it, vote us out.
Okay.
So I guess maybe that's where kind of this paradigm piece comes back to, that I'm trying to hit on, that I think we have things a little bit in reverse. I think that the commissions should be coming to council, as it states in the mission statement. You come to council and advise council on all of the things that pertain to those areas, and don't hold back and say, this is what we want to see. And it's up to council to figure out how to work it with staff to make it work. And there will be obviously budget constraints. But I don't know if I like that little statement. And if every commission we have coming in is making a statement in their presentation to council that they understand the current forecasted budget constraints when we don't, I think it's going to limit you guys. So I'd like to see that go away, and like to hear what you guys really want us to do for you.
You will have a wish list in your email tomorrow.
Thank you.
While I agree with your statement, the commissions should not limit themselves. I think from a historic perspective, in trying to be realistic,
It could be.
I will tell you, one of the reasons I ran for council initially 18 years ago was because we hadn't seemed to have enough money for everything but parks.
Okay.
And sometimes we've been a little more flush with the cash. Sometimes we haven't been we've been less flush with the cash. And your comment earlier that you made about having restraints, I think, was right on, because we realized that things like the Cove and our wave machine, we at council need to figure out if we're going to have a wave machine, if we're not going to have a wave machine, just like you said, or how are we going to replace it? And more importantly, and this goes on not just for parks, but also for things like PSPRS and other personnel matters, roads, for example. Obviously, we set the standards at as the council level for those type of amenities for our community, and in some cases, we really haven't figured out a permanent way to continue to fund those. And that's something we struggle with. So I appreciate the fact that you guys realize there are constraints. But again, I agree with Craig. You shouldn't limit what you think is best for the community when you advise the council.
That's fair.
Okay. Anybody else? Ma'am.
And that goes to all the commissions.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
All right, well, thank you very much. We appreciate, and we do hope, I'll apologize for rushing you through that.
No problem.
But you did an excellent job. And seeing nothing else on the agenda, meeting's adjourned. Ma'am.